So in the next few weeks, we should expect a series of potentially quite significant housing announcements by this new Labour government. The first one of these, and sort of underlining this, is a new national planning policy framework. Sitting under this will be firstly a review of the Green Belt, so-called. Firstly, the Labour Party will look at building on existing sort of brownfield land, and then look at the so-called grey belt. This has been quite well trailed. I'm sure lots of people watching this will be aware of this so-called grey belt. This is things like disused car parks, all the way to kind of petrol stations and other industrial type land. Labour Party will also look to reintroduce national mandatory housing targets. And then underneath these local mandatory housing targets, those have been removed by the previous Tory government year and a half ago. And this is in the context of planning consents, which have dropped by 28% since 2019. And also, along with those housing targets, the Labour Party will likely have talked about bringing in an extra 300 planning officers to try and kickstart those planning. Also within that document the National Planning Policy Framework is likely to be more of a focus from new homes for local people. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, how that interacts with their own plans for Labour Party. And then really lastly, from sort of the new announcements potentially coming in the next few weeks, will be a push from the existing. This is certainly much more focused on housing associations, so more of a focus on the Affordable Homes Programme and getting the existing money within that pot to deliver more homes. And then interesting to see how that interacts with Labour's other desire, which is more social rented homes, which obviously require greater public subsidy for those homes. Yeah, so there are also likely to be more in coming months, other announcements, other bills potentially that the Labour Party may look to introduce. The first of these will be likely to be, and they've talked about this, on right to buy. So they believe in right to buy, that with right to buy, it's still the best route for, and there should be a route for social rented tenants to be able to access home ownership. But they do want to have a look and potentially reform both elements of really the time it takes to be able to access the right to buy, but also some of the significant discounts. In London, that I think is up to £104,000. So look out for that. There's also highly likely, and this has been well trailed, a ban on Section 21. This is the ability of private sector landlords primarily to evict their tenants without much need for explanation or recourse. This has been often cited as a significant cause of homelessness by many homelessness charities. And then just reflecting on an announcement that has already been made, that was made in February this year, the Labour Party in February, where Keir Starmer announced that the Labour Party would no longer be spending up to £28 billion a year on decarbonising the UK economy by the end of this new Parliament, but that they would significantly reduce the spend on that. Within that, they previously announced that their Warm Homes plan they were going to spend £6 billion a year in the pursuit of decarbonising 19 million homes. That has now been downgraded to them spending £6.5 billion over the course of the entire 5-year Parliament, and will look to decarbonise 5 million homes. So given my 14 years within the sector and a deep understanding of the financial operating model of housing associations, I think it's worth considering some of the opportunities that may present themselves to the sector from this new Labour government. It's quite possible that the Labour Party will, in the first few months of the government, bring in finally a rent consultation. This is on the social rent formula that has been part of the sector's deal on rents for as long as certainly I can remember. That has been an expected consultation really for the last year and a half. So Labour Party will be looking to see what that rent decision could be from 2025. That rent formula that rent deal with the sector might well look to be long-term, so maybe 10 years. There may be an index link, and there may be some kind of cap and collar to assure both tenants and the government about the potential outcome of these in a high inflationary environment. Potentially that should and will help to give boards, regulators, funders, rating agencies, investors, the confidence they need really to progress with some of those key objectives of Labour, namely decarbonisation and building new social homes. And then another potential opportunity for the sector will be, currently there are significant restrictions on housing associations' ability to access the Building Safety Fund, and they have to bear the vast majority, if not all, of those building safety costs themselves. There may be greater flexibility within that fund for housing associations to be able to access, and there could also be some beneficial changes made to the tax system related to building safety that in the future under this new Labour government. And then lastly, on decarbonisation, so there are some areas of decarbonisation that the National Housing Federation have been calling on for a number of years, particularly around the VAT framework for decarbonising social homes. And so the Labour Party may look to alleviate some of those issues with that VAT framework so that they can then try and push more and greater decarbonisation works on the housing association homes. So with a new Labour government, for housing associations, there could be a few risks that it is worth commenting on. The first of these is that, and this has been described, every single political party describes themselves as a broad church. That's no different for Labour. You have on certain parts of the party the so-called Blairites, you have on certain other parts of more left-leaning Corbynista, if you will. Over the course of a Labour government, 5, possibly 10 years, depending on the, obviously the next 5 years, but that may lead to, particularly with those more left-leaning focused members of the party, a push to more work for councils, more building of council homes, more funding therefore derived for and pushed to councils, maybe to push them to build more and get more of those councils building again. And then kind of the last risk I would suggest is possibly a greater focus on building. Well, this is almost definitely the case, and it's interesting to see how this will interact, but the greater focus on both social rented housing that requires greater subsidy and regeneration at a time when the Labour Party and the government is unlikely to be able to give more subsidy, more grants coming into the sector. And so the pressure on housing associations' operating model could be a hard one. And then underlining all this, it's worth saying that it's our belief that housing associations should continue to support and continue to get behind and get involved with the National Housing Federation, much as Buzzacott do ourselves, as we do ourselves as sector suppliers to the NHF.